Hello everybody, and welcome to Notes from the Closet Floor. I am your host, Elyse Explosion, and welcome to episode 1 of my Patreon exclusive podcast. I'm not sure if I'm actually going to be making this particular episode public for everybody else, simply because, it's supposed to be a Patreon exclusive, but how are you going to know you want to hear it if you don't know what it sounds like to begin with? So we'll see how that goes. I might make this public for all backers at this level, and then if you guys want to jump up to the $5 level, check it out. Cool. So what is Notes from the Closet Floor? Well, in so many words, it literally is me sitting on the closet floor in my room, recording with my laptop and my microphone, just talking about stuff. And predominantly, I think these are going to be stories that I can't really tell on YouTube. I mean, I am 31 years old at this point, and only going to get older from here. So I've lived through a lot of weird stuff that make for good story times and interesting things like that. Just not all of it is what I would even consider safe for work. And I know I've talked about some of this stuff on Twitch before, some of it not so much, mostly because it's a little risque at times. It's a little bizarre, it's a little personal, and I figured that this would be a good way for you guys to kind of get to know me, if you don't already, at a more intimate level, and I think that's pretty cool. So these podcasts, I don't intend for them to be super long, because I don't like sitting and listening to things that are that long. I've got a real short attention span, and basically if you are longer than like an episode of like a cartoon show, I'm not going to watch or listen or whatever. So I'm going to try to keep these around half an hour long. They may be shorter than that, they may be longer than that, but we'll see how it goes. And before I get into what I wanted to talk about today, I wanted to mostly give some thanks to my good friend Hat Dog. Hat Dog did the, album art that you guys are seeing. As I'm uploading this to YouTube, I don't want to upload exclusively audio without something pretty for you to look at. So my buddy Dave did the artwork. You guys probably might know him as Hat Dog. Go commission him for really great stylistic artwork. And I think my good friend Rom, aka Saya Pimp, did the intro music that I'm going to be using to introduce you to this particular podcast. So without further ado, I've prattled on for long enough without giving you any meat and potatoes, but I think for starters, the first story I want to tell you guys is the story about the time I picked up a hitchhiker in New York City. So I gotta give some backstory for this one. I was in my late 20s at this point. I was working at a company that every so often, during rain events, I would have to go into New York City and do some kind of sampling. I got lucky in the fact that they hired me, or they picked me up to basically we would take the field samples and put them specifically into sample jars after doing specific things to them. I think we had to measure out certain amounts and add, some of them had, some of the jars had preservatives in them, some of them did not, and it was strange. We had giant, probably 10-gallon containers of sewage water that we had to transfer, and it was me, and usually there would be 3 tables set up. There would be 4 of us from my company and 3 people from another company. So we'd kill a good day just doing this. And I actually really enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot less strenuous, a lot less difficult work than the people who actually had to go out and do the sampling in the field. That was in the rain for, 8 hours at a clip, and that was really terrible. But unfortunately, we were at the whim of the weather. So there were times where we would get notification that was like, hey, it's 3:00 in the morning. You need to drive into New York to go do this sampling. And it actually ended up being pretty cushy. They would provide a stipend for food. So I would get $75 a day to be in the city to just spend on food. And they would provide, usually they would let me take a work vehicle, which was something. And sometimes we would get hotel rooms overnight. And it was always like really nice hotel rooms, like a Wyndham or something that the room was a good $100 a night or more. The perks of having an environmental job, I guess. So one night, it was about 7 o'clock at night, and I had been working on cosplay over at my buddy Sarah's house. And after that, I had to drive into the city because the event was going to be, we had to be there at like 2 o'clock on Monday afternoon. Fine. No big deal. Whatever. And so I finish up. It's about 7 at night, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to pack up and head into the city now. Because from where Sarah lives, it was about an hour's drive, and I didn't want to be out too late. It was late April, and it was one of the first really, really lovely days of the year. Like, I'm talking temperature in the mid-70s. We had the windows open. Things were starting to smell like spring. And it was all going to go to hell because it was supposed to rain that night. But we were just kind of living in how beautiful the weather was that day. So I pack everything up, and I hop in the car, and I'm taking my personal vehicle. I drive a 2009 Chevrolet Cobalt. I also drive manual transmission. So it's a 2-door car, kind of low to the ground, whatever. So I'm riding, and I'm driving up the parkway, and I get through the tunnel, because I have to drive through the Lincoln Tunnel in order to get to the city. And as soon as you get out of the tunnel, you're like right smack dab in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with New York City, or at least if you're familiar with New York City at the capacity that I am. But it's a big fucking city. Like, I can't really describe it any other better way other than there are people and buildings everywhere. It is truly the city that don't sleep, according to Will Smith. And it's true. It's like I said, it was like, 8 o'clock at night in late April, and it's just bustling everywhere. There's lights, there's sounds, there's sirens, and I'm driving down 42nd Street, because that's where it puts you out. And 42nd Street, you may know, because it is also part of Broadway in locations. So I'm driving past all of the marquees for some of the shows, and I drive past Times Square, and it's just this beautiful neon spectacle that I am staring out into, and I am so awed that I take out my phone, and while I'm stopped at a stoplight, take a picture of the road in front of me, and it's beautiful. And a cab pulls up next to me. This guy sticks his head out the back window and says, "Hey, were you taking a selfie?" in this deeply thick Irish accent. And I'm like, no, just taking a picture of the road, because my windows were open. Beautiful spring day. Of course my windows are down. And we're in stop and go traffic at this point. We'd pull up to the next light, we'd stop, and this guy and his buddy would continue to talk to me through the window. And I need to also preface this. These guys are fucking blitzed. They are the drunkest dudes that I have probably ever conversed with in public, outside of like a geology event or something like that. And it's entertaining. I'm feeling pretty good about myself, and I'm in the mood to make some bizarre choices that night. So it's definitely like it's a very flirtatious conversation. And we pull up. And I don't know what the hell block we were on. 42nd Street is a really long way out, and I was driving into Queens. New York City is basically, it's like the 5 boroughs. It's bigger than you think it is, because you think Manhattan's big, wait till you see the outer boroughs. So I'm trying to get into Queens. These guys are chatting me up, and next thing I know, the one guy, they hop out of the taxi. The one guy asks, hey, or I guess they'd asked, where I was going. I said I was going to Queens. They go, oh, that's where I'm going. And the one guy literally gets out of the car and gets into the passenger seat of mine, which threw me for a bit of a loop because, oh shit, I've got this strange drunken Irishman in my car. What the fuck is going on? And his buddy's at the window and he kind of like caresses my cheek and gets back in the taxi. And it's just, this is the trippiest thing. And I am half enamored by this and half in panic mode because, oh cool, what is about to happen? Because this is the kind of shit that you hear about in the news where, 20-something young woman gets murdered and raped because some weirdo Irish dude got in her car, which, in retrospect, was probably not the best idea I ever had. I let this guy in my car. But at the time, I was very emotional and thinking more with my heart than with the rest of my body. Maybe more thinking with other body parts other than my heart, but it certainly wasn't my brain. So we're driving and I'm just like, holy shit, what is going on? There's this hot guy in my car. He's drunk. Maybe he's high. And he starts talking to me. His name's Gary. I don't know why I remember this. I mean, I do know why I remember this. So Gary and I get to talking and turns out Gary's an engineer and he's working on a project somewhere in the city and he's currently staying in Queens. And I said, oh, okay, I'm also heading to Queens. I'm going over to Long Island City. So he goes, oh, okay, you can just give me a ride there. And we're talking and it's very obvious that this guy wants to take me to a bar or at the very least hook up with me. So we managed to take the BQE into Queens, and unfortunately, it seems that we stumble upon the hotel that I was going to be staying at. It was a Wyndham in Elyse. I'd stayed there a couple times before, so I knew what was going on. And I think he assumed I was going to invite him up to my room, which that wasn't about to happen. I mean, I knew I had already made several bad decisions at that point. And I wasn't about to invite some stranger up to my room to do who knows what, with permission or without, So I ask, and he keeps asking, he's like, oh, can we stop at a bar somewhere? And I tell him, like, look, I don't drink. I appreciate the offer, but I don't drink, and I've got work early the next morning, so I can't really go out and do anything, but I can take you where you need to go. And he goes, oh, okay. Unfortunately, he is too drunk to remember where he needs to go. So he basically just asks me to drop him off at a subway stop. I'm like, okay, this can't be that hard. I can do that. But unfortunately, at this point in time, I still had no idea where I was. Queens is huge. LIC is huge. And so I just kind of end up aimlessly driving around looking for an elevated station to drop this guy off at. And I finally, after like 20 minutes of driving around, find one. So I pull over and I go to let Gary out, and he like pulls me in super close and gives me this sloppy drunken kiss. And not gonna lie, it was pretty hot. Unfortunately, he tasted like a liquor bottle, which one can only imagine how much liquor that man actually had in his system at this point in time. So after like a good, like breathtaking minutes, he eases up, gets out of the car, kind of like salutes me farewell, and toddles off to the station platform. And I am just floating at this point because I had been single for a little bit there. This was between relationships. The relationship prior to this had been very abusive to me, and I might get into that at a later time. I might not. Who knows how personal this is going to get. And so I'm just like floating on cloud 9, redirecting my GPS back to the hotel. And I call Sarah and I let her know what happened. She goes, "What the fuck? You could have been killed!" And I'm like, yeah, you know what? I probably could have. So in that moment, that was when I realized how fucking stupid this whole thing had been. Like, not even just stupid, but also dangerous. And I felt a combination of elation and embarrassment and like I dodged a fucking bullet. So I make my way back into the hotel, and because I don't have to be up at like stupid o'clock in the morning, I get up at like 10 o'clock the next day. And what do? Because I'm still floating on this high, I post a missed connection to Craigslist, which, again, one of the ballsier things I've ever done. But in the missed connection, I think I said something to the effect of, if you can remember what animals I had on the dashboard of my car, I'll know it's you. Now, I didn't imagine that anybody would even click on this to see it, let alone respond to it. And amusingly, I got several responses, mostly in the veins of, this is the most romantic, weird thing I've ever read on this entire site, but also bordering on people trying to pretend to be the person that I had picked up and guessing all kinds of random animals. The one guy was like, oh, you had a penguin on your dashboard. I'm like, nope. It was like, oh, it was a teddy bear. I'm like, nah. For the curious, the animals I had on the dashboard of my car at that point in time, and if you've ever ridden in my car with me, you know what they are. I had a squeaky lobster that I got down the shore at Long Beach Island once, and it's been in my car as long as I've had it. And I also had a rubber duck with a sombrero that I had gotten out of a claw machine at a Walmart years and years ago. I no longer have that, but the lobster is still there. His name's Robster, and he does squeak, in fact. But it was just a very bizarre story that I still don't entirely know how to feel about. Like, I have a very positive recollection of it because nothing bad happened. But it could have just as easily gone south instantaneously. Would I recommend picking up Hitchhiking Strangers? No, I absolutely would not. Unless it's, not a stranger and somebody you genuinely know, then yeah, I guess go ahead for it if you feel like it. But, no, please don't pick up random people on the side of the road. You don't know who they are, where they're from, or what they're going to do to you. But I guess in my situation, cheers to Gary from Ireland for giving me a hell of a story to tell. So that is the beginning of the story times that I plan on sharing with you guys here on Notes from the Closet Floor. And I don't know, if you guys are interested in hearing more kind of crazy stories, let me know. The comments are open. This is an unlisted video. So if you see this, please don't spread this around. This is something that is to be special for Patreon backers exclusively. I still haven't decided if I'm going to release this first episode or not, but we'll figure it out. And I guess in the meantime, since these, I'm also not sure if I want to do these bi-weekly or monthly. I'm thinking I'm going to start out monthly until I actually, potentially gain Patreon supporters that will be at the tier that these are going to be going out at. Because if nobody's actually at that tier, why would I even bother doing these? Because, I don't know, I'm not really much of a podcast gal myself. I don't listen to any, except for, Purple Stuff and Lonely Barmaid? Sexy Barmaid? I don't fucking remember. My friend Allie Bishop is the DM of Laughing Barmaid! That's it! Laughing Barmaid! But yeah, the only two I really listen to are Purple Stuff podcast, hosted by my friends Matt and Jay, where they talk about, retro vintage kind of stuff, and The Laughing Barmaid, which is a D&D campaign run by and played by several friends of mine. So shout-outs to those, if you guys are interested in that kind of stuff. I'll leave some links down in the description. But I guess, in the meantime, let's see, I kind of want to leave these off with some recommendations, just to kind of make it worth your while. So, stuff that I've been really digging lately. On my Twitch channel, I've been playing Mother 3, which is a fantastic, emotional video game that's fucking me up. I've got an Elyse cries on stream counter, which is very important. I also have the death counter, and which I believe when I last played was up to 27. As for media, audio-wise, music-wise, check out Girl Talk. I've been listening to a lot of his remixes and mashups lately, and they're a lot of fun. They're super high energy and pull inspiration from all sorts of sources. There's hip-hop and rap and classic rock and modern rock and pop all fused together into a really fun, upbeat series of tracks that blend together seamlessly. It's particularly good music to listen to while you're at the gym. So 10 out of 10, highly recommend that. That being said, I just wanted to thank you guys so much for listening to Notes from the Closet Floor. This has been episode 1. I am Elyse Explosion. Stay tuned for episode 2, which may or may not involve a racist dog. Thanks much, guys. I'll catch you in the next one.